Goeienaand, good evening, fellow South Africans and citizens of the world. Many of you are like family. I've got to know you really well, and I'm going to miss you guys because I will be off for a few days. I will be coming back randomly and just posting the odd video, but my eyes do need a break, so I will be taking that break. The last video that I'm going to put up before I start my break is Dr. Stanton of Genocide Watch talking about a genocide happening in South Africa. Now, what's particularly interesting about this video is that he says that back in 2012, which is when this video was recorded, that South Africans, white South Africans in particular, were already facing stage 6 of a genocide. And it's a very, very incisive video in that he goes right into the detail about why South Africa is at a stage 6. Now, since then, of course, we've had things like the expropriation of land without compensation, which is hugely significant for the minority populations like the whites in South Africa, and surely would push that group of people much closer to being officially facing a genocide, even in the technical terms. All right, guys, look, have a great evening. I'll see you in a couple of days, and chat soon.
Where the genocidal cycle really begins is dehumanization. We see that kind of dehumanization right here in South Africa right now, and it's in the very preamble to the beginning of the ANC's documents, in which it refers to all whites as, quote, settlers. Now, if you refer to everybody in a class as a settler, you're also saying this person doesn't belong here. You're saying it's the equivalent of what the Turks did to the Armenians. They said these people are really, not Turks, and therefore they don't belong in Anatolia. It's the same thing that the Germans did to the Jews, that the Jews were somehow interlopers in German society and should be eliminated. Whenever you have that kind of dehumanization, and of course we know that the Tutsis were treated in the same way in Rwanda, you have the beginning of that downward spiral into genocide. The fourth stage is where you actually have organization, in which the people who are going to carry out the killings or the expulsions and so forth are organized to do so, are trained to do so, and in which they're often armed, in which they're trained ideologically and so forth. You find there the Interahamwe in Rwanda, or the SS in Germany, and so forth. In this country, you have several groups who I believe are in that category. Under Julius Malema and the Youth League, I believe that you had a group that was organizing to carry out this very kind of, what can you say, forced displacement of the white population. And he was calling for it openly. And now we have the deputy president who is, about to be sued, in fact, by TAU, Ronald Lamola, who's calling for war. Now this is the kind of talk that, of course, it's not only pre-genocidal, but it's also, it comes before crimes against humanity. So what I've been seeing, not just among people who, of course, were strong defenders of apartheid, and of course I was here during apartheid, and so I saw apartheid in action. I was very involved, in fact, in the anti-apartheid movement. And so for me, you know, this is really coming to grips with another reality that perhaps I didn't fully understand. We, I think, as human beings, need to first of all remember that we're all human, and that is the key fact about us. And so anytime you make these racial distinctions, you are dividing up the unity of the human race. Some people say that the big mistake people make about race is to think there's more than one. We are really all human first. And whenever I fill out forms, even in the United States, and we've still got these forms in the United States, where they ask you, what is your race? I just say, human. I remember that that was also true here in South Africa, and of course they used to really laugh at me when I would cross the border from Swaziland into South Africa, because that's what I did then too. I would just say human. But it is my belief, I think that it is our ultimate characteristic in the sight of God. And I believe that is really what we need to remember always. The next stage is polarization, in which you try to portray the people who are not with you as somehow being against you, as being your enemies. In which you portray the moderates, for example, the Democratic Alliance or other people like that, as somehow being also the enemies. That is where we have classified South Africa right now as a polarized society, one that is still racially polarized. Yesterday I was really struck that at a conference of the F.W. de Klerk Foundation, in which the F.W. de Klerk Foundation had invited representatives of the ANC to attend, not one person from the ANC attended. Now that is amazing. To have a Nobel Peace Prize winner invite and then have no one attend, it's just astonishing to me. And I saw the polarization, in other words, here in very real terms. What worries me the most is the next stage, because the next stage is the planning, it's the preparation. It's the preparation for how to carry out killings, it's the preparation for how to carry out forced displacement, for how to drive out the people that you don't want in your country. And that is what we are worried is happening now. We are worried that there are organized groups that are in fact doing that planning. We raised South Africa from stage 5 to stage 6 when Julius Malema began to go around singing the Shoot the Boer song again. It became clear to us that the Youth League was in fact this kind of an organization. It was planning this kind of genocidal massacre and also forced displacement of whites from South Africa. And so we raised it to 6. When Julius Malema was then, thanks to the TAU and others, tried for hate speech and was convicted and was in fact enjoined by the judge from ever singing that song again, we said, oh, you know, there was a great sense of relief from some of us that maybe South Africa was pulling back. But then the president himself started singing this song. Well, this really worries us now. And one thing that I have learned on this trip is just how strong the Communist Party still is in the the African National Congress, COSATU, the Youth League, and other parts of this system. The farm murders, we have become convinced, are not accidental. We don't know exactly who is planning them yet, but what we are calling for is an international investigation that will try to determine who it is who is planning these murders, because we do not believe them to be accidents. We do not believe them to be common robberies. It's very clear they're not, because so often people, like in this Viana case, for instance, you know, nothing was stolen. They were just murdered. And there's so many other cases like that. Especially, they were hate crimes, because the people's bodies were literally, they were desecrated. They were chopped up. They were, you know, disemboweled. The people were left with symbols on them that were indicating very clearly that this was a hate crime. An open Afrikaner Bible, for example, on the body. I mean, things of this sort are what I have seen before in other genocides. This is what has happened in Burundi, it's what happened in Rwanda, it's happened in many other places in the world. So, those who would be deniers and who would try to ignore the warning signs in this country, I think are ignoring the facts. Now, I will be going to the U.S. Embassy this afternoon to meet with the Minister Counselor for Economic Affairs. The Minister Counselor is above the ambassador in our rank system in our foreign service. And we will be talking about these things that I have found. We'll also be talking about the so-called Green Paper, which, in my opinion, as a constitutional lawyer, would essentially create a fourth branch of government. This valuer general would take away so much power from the judiciary to determine the fair value of land and other property that it would become like a fourth branch of government. In fact, one that would be controlled by the executive branch. It would totally upset the constitutional balance of powers that were set forth in the original South African Constitution. So, whatever system of land tenure is adopted in South Africa, the communists in the long run have in mind to take away all private property. That should never be forgotten. Every communist country I have lived in, and I've lived in Cambodia, I've lived in other countries that were communist. I helped the Ukrainian independence overthrow the communist system in the Ukraine. But every place you go where communists have taken over, they take away private ownership. Because private ownership gives people the power, the economic power, to oppose their government. Once you've taken that away, there is no basis on which you can have the economic power to oppose the government. So I can't come here, have learned a good deal, especially from you and from other people who have worked with the TAU and with Afrikaners who have struggled for such a long time in this country, that this is a country in danger, and I will continue to believe it is. We won't take it off of our radar screen. We are going to, in fact, try to come back and try to do a good study of South Africa, that one that will be maybe finally listened to in the world. I happen to know a lot of people by this time. I'm 66 years old, and when you're that old, you actually get to know a few people. And so the people on top of our Atrocities Prevention Board, for instance, in the United States, Adama Dieng, who's now going to be the Special Advisor on the Prevention of Genocide to the UN Secretary General, is a very old friend of mine. People like that are the people I will be contacting.